governing body. They never lie or deceive us. They never lie or deceive us. We can have absolute trust in the governing body.
Absolutely. You can trust the I can't say it. Okay, well, that's what they say, that you can absolutely trust the governing body. Now, did you see that word on the thumbnail? I guess it's behind me. Just take a look at that word on the thumbnail. It's called Contumacious. Is that how you say it? Let's see what it says here. I have it up on Google. It's
Contumacious.
Contumacious. Contumacious. That's the American. Here's the British.
Contumacious.
Contumacious. Contumacious. So I kind of say it a little bit of both. Contumacious. Contumacious. So the Watchtower is labeled as contumacious. 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 How do you say that?
Contumacious.
Contumacious. Contumacious. It's a legal term, contumacious. It's especially of the defendant's behavior. If they stubbornly or willfully, disobediently to authority. Stubbornly or willfully, disobediently to authority. So this is like in the courts, it's a word that's used. Last week we were talking about spoliation of evidence. That was a new word for me. Spoliation. That was in the Montana case. The Watchtower was charged with spoliation of evidence. That means destroying the evidence. So that's all over the courts. The judges all know about that now. So now they have a new word, but this is pertaining to a lawsuit against the Watchtower. And here's what in the dictionary definition it says: stubbornly or willfully disobedient to authority, his refusal to make child support payments was contumacious. So when you think of child support or paying out someone that needs the money. So we're going to look at this case, contumacious, and we're going to pull it up on the screen here. First of all, let's try this again here. Take a close look at the word. So there's contumacious. So when we think of the Watchtower, we can think of that, contumacious. So let's move over to the different display here, contumacious. This is where we were. Now this was regarding a trip to the assembly hall. The Jehovah's Witness lady or guy or whoever it was, they went to the assembly hall. This particular one that's for sale right now. And this led me to believe, I wonder if the Watchtower is self-insured and they have to start selling off property. Well, this property, they have it up for sale 4 weeks ago, it shows. And this is the assembly hall that was involved. Well, what happened? This lady or guy, well, the Watchtower has a duty to maintain sidewalks and so forth up to the, right up to the assembly hall. And they didn't maintain some structure. Looked like, I was reading in some papers that the structure was maybe protruding. They moved something and there was something protruding. I think someone tripped and fell. It said that there was permanent damage. And the hospital files, Watchtower came up with this excuse, 6 months. They didn't get back to anybody for 6 months. So now they're calling it contumacious. So I'm going to pull that up here just so you can see it. So the this is the little bit of it here. The injuries and damages alleged to have been sustained by the third party's plaintiffs were caused in whole or in part by the arose out of the third party plaintiff's culpable conduct. The injuries and damages alleged to have been sustained by the plaintiffs were caused in whole or part by the culpable conduct of the plaintiff. Okay, so here we are, another motion for sanction against Jehovah's Witness lawyers. See, the lawyers weren't responding to the damages. You know, this lady went to the assembly, ended up in the hospital. Permanent damages, this person, I keep saying lady. It's not necessarily a lady. Could be a child, who knows. But here it is. The Watchtower actually wanted to get this thrown out. They put a note of issue. They wanted it thrown out. They wanted to vacate, right here, they wanted to vacate the note of issue. And the defendant's refusal to schedule depositions despite a court's order requiring them to do so is equivalent to a waiver of depositions. And further, the defendant's knowledge, that's the Watchtower, their knowledge of the above facts makes their instant motion to vacate the note of issue frivolous. Accordingly, the above cited reasons, coupled with the waste of judicial resources, entitles the plaintiff to an award of costs and sanctions. So this is the motion that's put forth by the person's lawyer, the JW. This is a Jehovah's Witness going to an assembly, and they don't make it to the assembly. They make it to the hospital, and so now they can't go to work. They have permanent damages, and 6 months later, they have hospital bills to pay out, and the Watchtower wants this all thrown out of court. They don't want to pay anything, and they have all kinds of reasons. So anyways, that's what's happening in New York, and what's happening now, they're calling it, here's the word right behind me. I'm going to move off the screen again. You see it there? Contumacious conduct. So the defendant's refusal to schedule depositions, that's the Watchtower's refusal, as court ordered, evinces willful and contumacious conduct. So this is what Watchtower looks like in court. Contumacious conduct. So last week it was spoliation, destruction of evidence. This week it's contumacious conduct. And folks, this should be a big warning to everyone out there. If you have a claim against the Watchtower, it may be very hard to get money out of them. They have the lawyers just ignore the courts. You have to do what is being done here, and you have to keep at it and keep at it. But this still isn't done. This still hasn't even gotten to court. The Watchtower has not even had the opportunity to hear the judicial matter, the case, in court, and they want it thrown out. Can you believe that? So anyways, folks, we'll keep you up to date on what's going on in New York, contumacious conduct, and we'll put all the links below. Thanks to watching Watchtower for all of this information. Now, this led me to another question. Is Watchtower self-insured? Because the way they're acting here, by ignoring the courts, ignoring everything, just not wanting to pay, wanting to throw it all out, basically the JWs, the baptized JWs coming to their assemblies that get hurt. You end up in the hospital because Watchtower was negligent, didn't do something on their sidewalk or something or other. Up here in Canada, we have ice problems in the winter. Maybe they didn't salt it. These things can happen, folks. That's why we have liability insurance. Insurance companies pay out because people, you know, they try to settle this fairly quick. Well, Watchtower wants it thrown out of court without even hearing the case. So it leads me to believe Watchtower is self-insured. And so I put that out there in Google. Kent talked about it. He figures that they're self-insured. And I went a little bit further. Where is it? Okay, yeah, so I did a search on it. JW Facts, I'll link that. They did a real great article, and they showed how rich the Watchtower is, all the properties they own, and they pretty much are agreeing that perhaps they are self-insured. It looks like it. Like there's no talk about insurance. When corporations get this large, they self-insure. They couldn't afford insurance. It would break them. and they're non-for-profit, so they go for donations. They hope that the people, the JWs, let's say you're out mowing the lawn. Now, excuse me, just for a moment here. So this is a great article on Watchtower's wealth. They attack all the other religions and churches for their wealth, but yet the Watchtower, they continue to display Rolex watches. The leaders, that's what they wear on the platforms in various pictures. So it may seem, when they think of tithing, well, all the free donated labor. You see, other churches, they contract it out. They build a church, they contract it out. Worldly people, whoever, people outside of the religion, they just bid on it. It's part of a construction thing. Not with Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all free labor. And all these people are donating everything, donating equipment, donating as much as they can. Their time, valuable. They encourage their people to be tradespeople so they can build and build and build for free. And yet then they take these properties and sell them off. Why? Well, they got to pay all the damages. They're self-insured. So if they get a lawsuit, just like it showed at the beginning there, they're selling that assembly hall. That's what it would look like. Maybe that's why they're delaying. Maybe they don't have the money. Maybe they're paying out too much CSA all over the world. But anyways, it's contemptuous. Contemptuous? Contemptuous. I think that's the word. That's what it is in the courts. It's not a good word. Here's what it is.
Contumacious.
Contumacious. Contumacious. Brand new word for me. I'll have to start using it. Watchtower is contumacious. And if you are in a different language, you can choose the language. So there's different ways of saying that. Just go to Google. Okay, we're going to move on to the next article. And the next article is... Okay, just a light note here on what's going on in Amsterdam. ExJWs demonstrates against social exclusion. Jehovah's Witnesses in Amsterdam are speaking out. There's like 30,000 people coming to the Stephen Let. And if you think this isn't idol worship, 30,000 people come in. Usually these assemblies, 10,000 maybe, but 30,000 people coming in. Why? And they're all coming in. They're flying in and paying great expenses on hotels and everything. Why? To see the idol, one of the 9 idols, Stephen Let. If this isn't idol worship, folks, I don't know what is. So anyways, there's Dalem has about 20 people there protesting. And I believe goat-like personalities there. Now, if you don't know who Dalem is, he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness. Here he is. And he was brought in when he was like 4 as a foster child into a Jehovah's Witness home. And it was a disaster. His grandmother or something was a JW, and it was forced down his throat. And anyways, he has quite the story, and I'll pin it at the bottom. So he's the one that's behind this movement. He's into politics now. And again, it's over the shunning, the exclusion, and all the terrible things that we're fighting for all over the world. So that's what's going on in Amsterdam. Talk about pressure. Pressure on watchtowers. What kind of an attitude do they have? Let's say that again.
Contumacious.
Contumacious. They have a contumacious attitude all over the world. Okay, so we're going to go to our next article. And this one, we're going to take a look at a very quick newscast. And this sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about next.
Congresswoman Deborah Ross is introducing new legislation to support...
So there's some new legislation out for on the child sex crimes, and this is going to help with the bankruptcy. You see, a lot of these organizations with CSA, they're just going bankrupt. Churches are going bankrupt all over the world. We're going to be talking about what's going on around the world a little bit, Spain and some of the other countries, Japan. So the countries are getting smart. They're seizing the assets of these organizations, or they're bringing to light and they're passing legislation because this is what's happening. So I'm just going to get off the screen and I'm going to let this run.
Well, Congresswoman Deborah Ross is introducing new legislation to support survivors of child sex abuse through bankruptcy reform.
CBS 17's Brea Hollingsworth in studio with what this legislation entails. Well, Bill, Liz, Congresswoman Ross introduced the Closing Bankruptcy Loopholes for Child Predators Act. It's a bipartisan bill that will address the misuse of the bankruptcy system by organizations facing lawsuits for child sex abuse. We've seen many of these types of cases from notable organizations like USA Gymnastics, the Boy Scouts of America, and Catholic Archdiocese. Congresswoman Ross says due to the extension of statutes of limitations for child sex abuse, some organizations have faced many lawsuits from people who were abused as kids. These organizations often end up filing for bankruptcy, which allows them to stop discovery and in turn silence survivors.
This legislation is so incredibly critical for survivors. It alters a bankruptcy process that, quite frankly, has been perverted for the benefit of the organizations that have harbored those who have abused us.
Now, the bill will allow sex abuse victims to continue working on discovery during bankruptcy proceedings. It'll also allow them to send impact statements and require forensic accountants to assess the debtor's estate in hopes of making sure that victims receive fair remedies. Bill, Liz?
All right, Brea, thank you very much.
So it looks like Congress is taking action, and this is happening in many states in the U.S., where they're looking at these loopholes in our legal system, and it's allowing organizations that are guilty of CSA, child sex abuse, to exploit bankruptcy laws, denying victims justice, and stalling the legal process by obstructing discovery, silencing victims, and these entities, these watchtowers, because it's not just Watchtower, but Watchtower, they're one of the big ones out there that are doing this. And they're compared just in side by side with the Catholic Church. So while the Closing Bankruptcy Loopholes for Child Predator Acts cannot erase the pain inflicted, it seeks to address these injustices and offer victims a semblance of justice that they rightly demand. And we want to give a big thumbs up to this fella here, Dalem, Henry Dalem, and he's in Amsterdam. I'll pin this article. There's a whole story on him. Very interesting. So keep up the good work, and big thumbs up to all those in Amsterdam right now that are part of this program, out there picketing and telling the Watchtower no more. So, yeah. Okay, well, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to what's going on in Japan. Now, we know about what's going on in Japan. If we've been following that a bit, we ran some videos. Approximately 70% of the second-generation religious believers were abused by their parents without realizing it, looking back in time, and it was a situation of abuse. So this all came out in Japan, and now the Watchtower, they went out. Remember, we read that paper in Germany, they exposed it. The Watchtower went within their people and say, hey, anybody know anything about Japan? If you have any kind of a degree. So, of course, out of 8 million people, you're going to find some people. And they found a couple of doctors that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and Blue Envelope, Phil on Blue Envelope did a really good rundown of it, very thorough. In fact, if you're interested, just go to Phil at Blue Envelope. And if you want to see it. So, but anyways, they have a Jehovah's Witness doctors there, and they put out this fudged report. And some of the people are very questionable that they use in it as authority figures. You'd think if you're going to get a report on yourself, you'd get an independent group to come in and study you. Not Watchtower. They got to fake it, or the fudge it. So what's going on in Japan? Well, their latest post is the result of the first government survey on the abuse of the second-generation religious people will soon be made public. And the results obtained exclusively by the FNN show that about 70% of the respondents acknowledged that looking back at time, they realized that the situation was abusive. So it sounds like Japan is now about to go public. So that's going to be another big battle for Watchtower. They have a lot of buildings, printing in Japan. Japan is where they're kind of spearheading, looking after a lot of countries. Imagine if they lose their status in Japan. They don't have to pay taxes on all that land. And the big thing is they're doing it to make sure the victims are looked after, and that these big organizations like the Unification Church in Japan, that they're just not selling off property and moving out. That's what they're worried about. They want to look after the victims. And they want to make sure the victims aren't being taken advantage of money-wise by these churches. And that's being looked into in Spain. So in Spain, Spain approves to plan to compensate victims of the Catholic Church sex abuse. Church will be asked to pay. Spain has approved a plan aimed at making reparation and economic compensation for the victims of sex abuse committed by the people connected to the Catholic Church. So this is happening in Spain right now. There's 440,000 adults that may have suffered sex abuse in Spain by people linked to the church. And roughly half of those cases were committed by clergy. So Spain is exposing it all over the world. This is happening, folks. And the project will include free legal assistance for all the victims and of sex abuse, and it will reinforce the prevention supervision in schools. Isn't it an excellent program, folks? They're setting an example for all over the world. Here's how it concludes. It says, only a handful of countries have had government-initiated or parliamentary inquiries into child sex abuse, although some independent groups have carried out their own investigations. Now, I like what Spain's doing. And we're going to take a look at what's going on in New Zealand next. What's happening there is great. It's where the victims are looked after. They don't have to start hiring lawyers or anything like that. They're just going to get looked after. We know we have a problem. We have these churches that are all guilty, and now it's all coming out. Everything hidden will be revealed. Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses have been fighting in New Zealand and appealing everything, and it's been dismissed. The courts have no use for what's going on with Jehovah's Witnesses in court. Why? Because of this word.
Contumacious.
Contumacious. They have a contumacious attitude. And this is what's going on. They're watching all over the world. Here it says, a legal bid by Jehovah's Witness Church challenging a ruling by the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care has been dismissed by the Court of Appeal. They said, yeah, it's done. Get out. At the Wellington Court in March, a church appealed a High Court ruling that dismissed its claim to be excluded from the investigation. Remember, they said, we don't look after children. When you and I know their website is full of videos on children. And in fact, their website is full of videos, we ran this, where the children have to reach out in the congregation to older people, other people outside of the family. They're training the children to get involved with other people. You know, that could be dangerous if you don't have a program for CSA within your religious organization. What about all of the times that you go out in service? You see, most churches, they have a Sunday school, so once in 7 days, the kids might sit for an hour in a Sunday school while the parents are upstairs listening to the sermon, and they're in care of a Sunday school teacher once a week for an hour. You see, with Jehovah's Witness religion, there's 7 days in a week. And if you're a pioneer-type family, you're going to be out in the ministry a lot. And if you have children, a lot of pioneers take their children with them. And different people, as the children get older, they're out with different people, different families. They're pawned off, depending on how many children you have. So throughout a week, children, through the organizational structure that they have, could be with other people for hours on end. When it comes to the ministry, it could be hours on end. What if you are in a call? You have a car group. Inside the car group is a male elder, and you leave your children in that male elder's care, your little girls. And you're in a call with the elder's wife for an hour. This could happen all week. So Jehovah's Witnesses are looking after children more than 1 hour a week. And there's more people accountable. There's all kinds of people in the congregation, where with the Sunday school, a typical church, There's one Sunday school teacher that's trained in sociology and children and so on and so forth, usually a woman. And that's what you'll find, folks. It's done a way different. So Jehovah's Witnesses trying to get out of this stuff, they can't. And here's what it concludes. It says, rather, this is what the court said, rather, it is Jehovah's Witnesses who have sought to single themselves out as a group who should be excluded from the scrutiny by the inquiry. So they're saying we're too righteous to be inquired. And they have done so notwithstanding the evidence of abuse committed by the members of the church. You see, even in Australia, there was over 1,000 people that were abused in that religion. A lot of them children at the time that they were children, in care of an elder, just like the example I gave you. So the argument has been dismissed, and the church must pay the government the costs for the standard appeal. So you see, Watchtower loses. They're going to be losing in court more and more, and that's why they have to sell buildings. You know, we've seen at the beginning of the program, they're selling the Queen's Assembly Hall in New York, the very assembly hall that the individual going to an assembly got hurt, landed themselves in the hospital with permanent damage, and the Watchtower won't pay. They just won't pay. They won't respond. Why? Okay, so here's the last article, from Jehovah's Witness Bethel to movie studio to retirement village. This is what's going on in the UK. Federated funds in London, a new 18-acre retirement village, Mill Hill, providing hundreds of new homes. And in there is the Watchtower. They have a senior apartment right here. 175 generously sized 1 to 2 and 3 bedroom apartments specifically designed for residents aged 65 and above. Construction is set to commence before the end of the year with full completion expected. So what does that tell me? What does that tell you? It tells us that the end is not coming. You see, they haven't been looking after the seniors out of these Bethels for years. And now you see they're getting all these grants. So now Watchtower is getting with the program. All the other churches, they've been building senior homes for the baby boomers for the last 20 years. 30 years, probably. Watchtower's just getting with it. They have all these baby boomers within their organization. They're all over 65. Where did they go? Watchtower's sitting on trillions of dollars. And there's lots of grants, you know, for senior homes, retirement homes. So, of course, Watchtower is going to get into the business, retirement home business. The end's not yet. You see, they got to change their program. Folks, the end's not yet. We're building retirement homes. Jehovah's going to allow this to, you know, they got to change their message and just quit with the end times thing and get with the program. Well, I think we covered it all. If you look behind me, there's New York. There's Spain, we talked about that, New Zealand, Japan. We talked about Amsterdam. So, yeah, there's a lot going on for Watchtower, and I haven't touched the tip of the iceberg. I just touched a couple of articles, and it doesn't look good. They're busy. Watchtower is very busy legally. But keep this in mind, like they said at the outset, you know, we can keep this in our forethoughts.
Our governing body. They never lie or deceive us. They never lie or deceive us. We can have absolute trust in the governing body.
Well, you can take that home or you can leave it. I decided just to leave it in the ditch and bury it. After what I've been seeing in the news, these guys are, well, let's run that word again. Contumacious. They're contumacious. So how can you make those statements when you're contumacious in court? Stubbornly or willfully disobedient to the authorities of the land. I don't think that's what I read in Romans chapter 13, verse 1, especially when it comes to how you treat your victims of your religion. Well, folks, having said all of that, we will keep living our day with love. We'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.